Welcome, everybody. We are so happy to welcome you all today. And we especially want to thank the Coalition of Ethnic Staff Organizations for partnering with us again for the third year in a row to bring to our community this very special program. I'm Camille Coué. I'm the Associate Director for the UC Berkeley Retirement Center. And in case you are not already aware of our center, we actually serve retirees from UC Berkeley, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and the Office of the President, and support the 4 retiree associations that serve these communities. So if you are interested in getting involved in your retiree organization when the time comes, please reach out to us. Our center offers numerous ways for retirees to stay connected to campus. All retirees are eligible for a retiree ID card, which allows you to continue access to the UC Berkeley Library, as well as additional discounts and perks. We also offer a very diverse set of programming to retirees and active staff, so we hope that you will attend those. And I'm going to add a link to our events calendar in the chat. This month, we have a 3-part series on estate planning and advanced healthcare directives that might interest you. And we also provide support in helping staff and retirees connect with the appropriate campus resources. We know that sifting through all of the different departments can be challenging, so we are here to help smooth that process as well. So please reach out to us with any questions. And I'm also going to post in the chat a link to our help page as well. And now I'm going to, we're going to get started with our panel in just a few minutes, but I'm going to introduce Natasha Boyce, who is the Elder Care Counselor at the Employee Assistance Program. And she's going to briefly provide information on the resources that they offer for staff as well. So Natasha, take it away.
Thank you, Camille, and thank you to everyone for having us come and join your event today. We really want you to know about this resource. Employee assistance is for current employees and staff who are having any type of challenge, whether it be at work or at home, or perhaps emotional challenge. We provide free counseling, confidential, of course. And we can also assist you if the issue that you're coming for is a little bit more of a long-term issue. We can assist you in finding a counselor outside of UC Berkeley who takes your health insurance. So please make use of us if you need. We also have, as Camille mentioned, elder care program within the employee assistance program, which is here for any employee who's caring or concerned about an older adult or a younger adult for that matter. You can come see me, either counseling, information and referral, brainstorming, whatever it means, so that we may provide you with the support needed in this journey. Also, we do monthly workshops here at Elder Care and Employee Assistance, and we have several support groups for employees. Currently we have a caregiver group and a BIPOC group. So please give us a call, email us, or check our website for our programs, and please do join us. If you are no longer a current employee, I want to highlight 2 agencies in our community in the Bay Area that are most helpful to family caregivers. One is called, and I'll put it in the chat, or here, I'm going to do it right now. One is called Family Caregiver Alliance, little known secret, I guess. It shouldn't be a secret, but every county in California has access to a caregiver resource center, which is a service where they provide, again, counseling, information and referral. They have some legal grants, some respite grants. They have wonderful workshops and support groups as well. So I highly recommend, in our area, in the Bay Area, the Caregiver Resource Center is called Family Caregiver Alliance. And I put the phone number there in the chat and the as well as the website. The other wonderful organization that's pretty much a national one, available in many, many areas in the country and many counties in the country, is the Alzheimer's Association. This is for someone who is experiencing any type of change in cognitive function or in memory or in language or personality or problem solving. A lot of different things can happen with our cognition. And the Alzheimer's Association is there to help folks who are experiencing these changes as well as their family members. So they don't only deal with Alzheimer's. And they have a 24-hour helpline, which is really invaluable if you get into trouble or have a question on a weekend or an evening where other folks aren't available, as well as a wonderful website. And they too will connect you with an individual counselor to help you with your particular situation. So that's the news I bring, and please come see us as you're contemplating a next chapter of your life, if we can be of any help and support.
Thank you very much, Natasha.
Yeah, any questions? I don't know if you have time for questions.
Yeah, well, we can if you have questions for Natasha, please post them in the chat. I'll make sure she gets them, or you can also reach out by email.
Perfect.
Great. And now I'm very excited to start our panel discussion. And so to kick it off, I'm very happy to introduce our moderator, Tracy Pascua Dea, who is the Academic Climate Program Director in the Office for Faculty Equity and Welfare, and a member of the Philippine Ex-Faculty and Staff Association and the Asian Pacific American System-Wide Alliance, also known as APASA. So Tracy, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Camille. Hello, everyone. Good to be with you all today, this afternoon. I'm just going to do some introductions of the panelists that we have here, the great panelists, and then ask them some questions. And then we'll also have, as Camille mentioned, time for questions towards the end. But so who's joining us today is, I'll start with you, Pat Hayashi, who has 30 years of service with the UC system, 26 at Berkeley. He retired in 2004 as the associate president of the UC system. But before that, you know, he was at Berkeley, where he last served as an associate vice chancellor for admissions and enrollment. We also have David McCauley here with us. Hi, David, who has 19 years of service at Berkeley. He retired in 2020 as the director of Berkeley, Oakland, Ailey Camp at Cal Performances. We also have Edith Ng here, who has 34 years of service at Berkeley. She retired in 2009 as the director of Staff Equity and Diversity Services and a lecturer in Peace and Conflict Studies. And then also we have Alma Valencia Gross here, who has 42 years of service at Berkeley. She retired in 2017 as the Senior Associate Director in the Office of Environmental Health and Safety. So we have a great group of folks here with multiple years of experience, and I'm excited to just learn from them as well as you all are, I'm sure. So let's get going. I kind of divided the questions into kind of three sections, kind of before retirement, while in retirement, and then just any advice and such. So let's kick it off. So the first question I have is, so did you retire with a plan, or are you just winging it and making it up as you go? I'm going to start with you, Alma.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So to answer the question, yes, I had a plan. You notice I put a little emphasis on that. At about age 61, I started thinking about retirement. So I did a couple things. I talked to some campus advisors, some financial advisors. I read a lot of books, talked with friends who had recently retired. Eventually, I created a plan. We'll call it Plan A. I had contingency Plan B. Then I retired. Now I think I'm at Plan H or something, also known as I'm making it up as I go along. What I realized after a while is that you can do as much planning as possible, and it's smart to investigate things, kind of explore things. But as you know, the panel and we were all talking at one point, flexibility is key. The ability to switch to something else because whatever you thought was going to work may not work, or it may not be what you want. So that's pretty much the approach I've taken since I'm in my, I think, 6th or 7th year of retirement. And it feels like it's gone very fast and also very slow, but it's great. Great to be retired.
Alma. How about you, David? Did you have a plan? or are you winging it?
Well, considering I used to perform with an improv group called Wing It,
Ah,
I'm pretty much winging it. There were some basic things, as Alma said, that I'd planned for. Retirement not being one of them, but I did plan to change what I was doing at some point. And in 2020, that turned out to be the year that I made that shift from being at Cal, working at Cal Performances, doing Ailey Camp, and moved over to being pretty much a full-time artist, if I could say that, or at least somebody that tries to paint art. So yeah, so that was it. And so now I'm just sort of moving along. I had hoped to have a show this year, and true to improv style, one was plopped into my lap last week. So it's just planning as I go.
yeah, thank you. And I know folks want to know kind of, because there's so many parts to planning, right? It could be about financial, it could be emotional, all sorts of pieces to it. I don't know, Edith or Pat, if you wanted to comment on that piece of planning and or not planning.
Well, I think the most important thing for me was because I was planning to retire early, to make sure that I had enough finances to do so. So, and Berkeley has a great pension plan. So I was able to retire early, in fact, earlier than I anticipated. And my call to the financial advisors, if I decide to retire now, can I do it? And there was a yes. So I went ahead and did that, but I didn't have the other planning that Alma probably did in terms of looking around. So it was planning as I went, and I learned a lot of lessons as I kind of got into it after, when I retired.
I've never planned anything in my entire life. And the beauty of working for Berkeley for most of my career is that it's so varied and large that opportunities just come your way. I think throughout my career I applied for 2 jobs and I got one of them. The other jobs were just offered to me. I retired when I was 61 because my boss, President Dick Atkinson, retired, and I just didn't want to work for someone else. And I had no plan, but I had read E.B. White's thoughts on retirement. He wrote Charlotte's Web, and he said it's best to choose something that fascinates you but is very, very difficult to master. And I chose art and singing. Those are 2 areas that I had no background in whatsoever, and they've kept me busy and throughout my retirement. In
Thanks,
fact,
Pat.
Edith and David are coming over to my house in a couple weeks to do some life drawing.
We're already starting to network.
Yep.
That's so great.
I
Go ahead,
think
Alma.
the real challenge is, as Edith said, if you work at UC, within the UC system long enough, you really do have access to a fairly decent pension, which doesn't exist much anymore anywhere else. And so if you're at a point where you can be relatively comfortable with what we'll call it your financial and basic living situation is, then it really is about, what am I going to do with myself? If I was so used to a certain structure at work, we'll say it this way, I had lots of work friends, so therefore your exposure is there, you have a purpose, you know what you're going to do every day. And then now you're in a situation where, I love this phrase, you're paying yourself. No, you're not having to worry too much about the financial or the living situation, and you have time to think and to maybe look for ways to challenge your brain. Then that's where the challenge to me comes in. When I jokingly said I'm now at plan H or plan Z, I was really talking mostly about what interests me, what challenges me, how do I use my brain so that I, quote, don't lose it. What can I do as something new? Do I learn a new language? I mean, these are the kinds of things that if you read enough books, they tell you challenge yourself with something that's uncomfortable, something that makes you work other parts of your brain, so that you're always in this sort of discovery education mode. And so that's just the other part of, once you make the leap into retirement and you figured out I can support me and my family or whatever, then it's, now I've got all this time, or at least I think I have all this time. What do I do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that, Alma. And I know, David, do you have anything to add to that in terms of kind of maybe social networks that you might have set up, or any other things that?
Well, yes, it's good to have a lot of friends. Well, good friends, I should say, not a lot. Quantity doesn't make up for having quality. I have a support network that extends around the world. And actually, about 12 of my friends that live in various parts of Europe and the US, we're all converging in New York in about a month. Just renew hanging out together. We've known each other now for 40 years. So they have been a sounding board for lots of questions I've had, and support when things seemed, sometimes a little crazy. But one piece I'd like to add in terms of preparation, indeed, prepare, but you also should hold a piece of information that came to me when I danced in New York. One of my mentors, a very well-educated, wealthy individual, was dying, and he looked at me and he emphasized, there is no security. So yes, plan, but also know that life may throw you some curves. And if you can be happy with that, then you're going to be a very happy person.
I think the hardest piece for me when I retired was because I had gone to Berkeley. I spent 34 years at Berkeley. I spent my whole life pretty much at Berkeley. My identity was all wrapped up in that work. So it was very hard afterwards, because anything I did, I had to start all over again. If you meet new people and so anything you do, you have to learn it, and you're starting from, base one. And so I think it was difficult to say, man, I have to learn this over again. I already know all this other stuff, but I'm not using it. So I think it was really important for me to establish a structure, have a structure. And it could be, work friends, but I think ultimately having a community that you can go to, I felt that if I had something that could anchor me, then I could do everything else. Because the honeymoon, when you first retire, you say, I have time to do everything, anything. And after you do nothing for a couple of weeks, and then it's like, oh, I have time to clean out my garage or what. And you never do that because you realize you never actually want to do that. So the thing is I think when I have a friend who, well, the two of us were into mosaics. And we did mosaics for a long time. And when she retired, she joined a community of people who did mosaics, and that was her community. So some activity, like Pat was saying, art, music, whatever, to anchor you, and then that provides the structure for the rest of it. So I was floating around a lot when I started, in retirement. But I did continue working part-time for teaching at Berkeley, and also doing some work at Office of the President. So I actually really did not retire from total working also as a consultant until last year, so 2023. So I've been doing like part-time stuff, but I think it is important to have your own community, and to also think about what retirement means to you. What your intention in, or even the word retirement. I don't think I'm retired. I think I'm like doing all these different chapters of adventures and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So in some ways, sounds like you unretired by taking on the part-time job, but then you're still retired, but doing the different chapters. I appreciate that. Patrick, did you want to comment on anything in terms of whether it be the community aspect, your art, kind of what you're doing in retirement?
Well, I read about Harvard's 80-year-old study where for the 80 years, they've tracked first men and then later women from a young age until they died. And they found that the single most important factor in maintaining joy was not economics, it wasn't even health, it was friendship. And I think that at Berkeley, you make a lot of friends automatically through work. And in retirement, you have to work at it. And that requires a set of skills, especially if you're shy like I am. But it's important and it's worth it. That leads to a different problem. I'm now 80, and so a lot of my friends I'm losing to death or dementia, and so that requires a whole different ways of thinking.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I know there's that other aspect, perhaps, of while in retirement, that mortality or potentially even caregiving. I don't know, David or Edith, if you wanted to comment on that.
Sure. Edith is like, oh no. Yeah, caregiving happens. I'm deep in the middle of that right at the moment with a relative of mine. And it's, I'm thankful for the friends that I have because caregivers need support. You need to talk with someone when you're doing this because there are highs, lows, frustrations. So I would say identify some people. If you haven't done something like estate planning or done your medical forms of, do not resuscitate, all of that sort of stuff we do not like to think about, I say do it. I'm dragging my feet, but I'm doing it finally, because we never know when that moment's going to hit, that some surprising health thing just crops up for us or for one of our loved ones. So map out some caregivers support for yourself, and also look into your final arrangements for moving on to wherever we move on to.
I haven't had to do any caretaking, so I'm thankful for that. Well, no, but I have friends. I think what I see from afar is the mental toll it takes for people to caretake, and they don't often look for support because they think they have to do it on their own. So I think actually this Berkeley community can help with that. And I think it's thinking about your own mental health, because when that goes, you're not able to help anybody else. So kind of realizing that you have your own limits as well in caretaking. Yeah.
I know we spoke when we were preparing, we spoke about how important not only caregiving for others, but caregiving for yourself, caring for yourself in some ways. So I'm curious, were there any surprises that came up or things that changed while in retirement that you wanted to share? I'm trying to think if people are thinking about it. So I don't know if Alma, if you have something to share.
I was actually thinking, surprise, COVID.
Yeah.
I bring it up. I think I actually retired just before any of that actually hit. And I had, as I said, a plan. I was going to do a number of things. I wanted to volunteer. I want all of these things that unfortunately I was precluded from doing because we all got shut down. So that was kind of a curveball. But the thing about it is that it, in some ways, it kind of forced me to take the time to stop and reevaluate what I really wanted to do. And that we were going to eventually, once we realized it wasn't just going to be 2 or 3 months, but a year or more, that we weren't necessarily all going to come out the same as when we went in. And with that as sort of a backdrop, it does give you pause to think, well, how can I change what I'm doing? I was thinking about something that Pat had mentioned with just the loss of friends and the fact that there is mortality looming on all of us, whether we believe it or not. I love it when we're all 18 and think we're going to be here forever, and then you hit the sort of other side of 60 and go, maybe not. And then there's the justification of, yeah, but my parents were alive until they were in their 90s, so I've got at least that much more time. The fact of the matter is none of us know how long. So you want to take advantage of what time you have, but not only that, really think through, and that's where I'm coming from. Think through how you want to spend your time. I don't know if any of you are fans of Lord of the Rings. One of my favorite characters, Gandalf, said, all you have to do is decide what to do with the time that's given you. So that resonated with me, even though the movie came out, 20 years ago? I was watching it a couple weeks ago and went, whoa, that is really important because it gives you pause to think, how do I adjust? So those are the kinds of things, the surprises is, as I said, COVID, and then really having to think about what is available if I want to contribute. How can I take better care of myself so that if I'm going to last as long as I hope, that I'm still spry and running around like a crazy person at 90 as opposed to 70.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say that is a true thing, Alma. Just watching some of the D-Day coverage of, these great folks that went over at 102, 100 and so, it's like, yeah, what are you going to do? How are you going to make all of this count for something that is satisfying to you in a good way, but also does something good for the general whole?
I think it's important to have friends who are not just your age or a little bit older, but to have friends much younger than you. My best friend is 13 years older than me, and she said, you have to have a range of ages. Otherwise, all you're talking about is all your aches and ills and doctors that you're seeing. So I actually intentionally try to develop I have former students that I see. I have my daughter's friends who are friends of mine now. And I will tell you that having younger friends is really fun. It actually keeps us younger, keeps us on our toes. So I'm a real, yeah. So I would put that out there for folks in terms of intentionally creating your community.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That's good. I think I'm on my way for that, my range of friends and ages. So what, I know we talked about kind of, some of you have that shared love for arts, love for arts. What other things do you do while you're in retirement?
One thing that I've done is I've worked with an Asian American organization for the past 30 years, leadership education for Asian Pacific Americans. And they have a program every July, and I've participated in the program every year. And it's really nice to be able to give to your community. And it's nice because sometimes you need your community. The other day, about 2 months ago, I was walking in Montclair in front of Lucky's, and I was approached by three teenagers, a young man and two girls. And as we were passing by, he steps in front of me and slams his shoulder into my chest, and I was just shocked. I wasn't hurt physically, but spiritually, I was really damaged, and I didn't know what to do. Well, for some reason, one of the feelings I felt was shame, and I couldn't understand that. But it was so strong, I didn't even tell my wife about this for about a week. And the solace, the only way I got any kind of comfort was starting to talk about it with my community. And And that made all the difference. And I think that's something that we've learned from the Black Lives Matter movement and the Me Too movement, is our community means a lot, especially when we experience trauma.
Thanks for sharing that, Pat. Sorry that happened, but glad you had the community with you.
Mhm.
How about other folks? What else are you doing while in retirement? I know, Edith, you shared a little bit about working, and I think folks are kind of interested if anybody did the retiree recall program. I don't know if anybody did.
Yeah, I think I participated in the recall program.
Okay,
The
yeah.
great thing about retiring and then working part, you can quit anytime. If you don't like it, you don't have to stay. So I think that's what's the cool thing about working part-time, you know? And things happen, you know, in that sense. And it feels good to be able to use your skills that you've honed really well in retirement. So it is in a way, even if you get paid for it, a way to give back to the community, I think. And I think it also keeps our confidence going while we're learning other things that are difficult to do. So I enjoyed it. And then when it got tough, I said, well, I'm not doing it anymore. You know, I don't have to do this. But I think it's good to think about what you leave behind, you know, what knowledge, what, I don't know, emotional. I think we underestimate how people could be influenced by us. And I think just even doing ordinary things, you know, the volunteering piece and, but, you know, thinking intentionally about how do we give back, you know, because we have amassed a wealth of knowledge and experience and wisdom. And so, yeah, how do you do that?
Yeah. I do have to give a counter to that, not to say that that's a bad thing, but if you've been someone who has worked closely with your community a lot, then you need to also look at turning that around and working with a smaller group, either yourself or just a few people. I guess I have to call it a career, in dancing in New York at the Ailey organization for 15 years and teaching and performing and helping to launch young dancers out into the world. And then working here at Cal at Ailey Camp, working with this closely with a specific population of 11 to 14-year-olds in terms of giving them life skills, encouragement, and opportunity. You know, I felt toward the end of that, you know, like, I think I need to turn some of that inward and take some of these things and develop myself further. So the university just has a ton of stuff to do, all of which I've not dived into yet, but I'm considering it. Thinking about another language, but yeah, if you've been working with the community, think about doing some things to refresh yourself and your smaller community right around you, and you're never going to stop working with your broader community. That doesn't stop. I still do it. Sometimes unbidden, I give some little pieces to various folks I meet on a day-to-day. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Can I ask something to the other three panelists? Do you find that you have too much to do?
I think I spend a lot of time doing things and it, you know, the idea of stopping and reflecting is important. And I don't do it enough. So I probably have my day usually pretty packed. So I do think that the reflection part is really important because we're never going to have that time again, you know, to think about, to do things with more intent is what is the feeling. So I always have to say, I got to slow it down, but you know, I don't know. I do go and I forget. So it's a good reminder. And we have the time to do it. We have the time to reflect deeply. But yeah, I think a lot of my friends are on the go, or they're retired and they're constantly doing things.
Mm.
Anyone else want to comment, Alma or David?
I was trying to figure out how best to answer that, because at times I don't feel like I have enough to do. And then there are times when I'm running headlong into whatever, cramming so many things in, and then I find myself exhausted at the end of the day and questioning, what did you just do and why? And part of it is that I'm in a couple of associations and we gear up for certain things. And so those last few days before you're getting ready to deliver or to do whatever you're going to do, I'm one of those folks who I'm very much just start running instead of thinking about it. So later I will reflect, as Edith said, I will reflect and think, I really need to stop and see if I can balance this out a little bit. I will admit to there's generally one day a week where I purposely don't do anything or try not to. And if anything, maybe I pick up a book, just sit down, maybe I'll go play piano or something, but that's the extent of it. No commitments, nothing. At least I try. It's the same thing as don't pick up your iPad, don't start doing all these other, read every story you can get your hands on. I'm finding that if I do that and commit to that, stick with it, then the rest of the time I'm willing to actually pack the day, but I try to balance as much as I can. So there's what I used to refer to as the must-dos. It's the business of living, the should-dos, I really ought to wash those dishes or something. And then the things that are nice to do, like I really just want to watch something and not do anything else. So that's that interesting balance.
I love that advice. Must do. What was I forgetting? I have to remember. Must do.
Must do, should do, want to do.
Gotcha.
Or like to
I
do.
might have to do that now. So just a couple more questions, then we can turn it over to the audience for questions. But if you were kind of either looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently? Or maybe the other half of that is just advice that you might offer to ask to folks.
Well, I have a short one for that. I would have actually invested money. I would have taken, it was, for some reason, I did not think long-term about that. It was always, okay, well, you're here, maybe you're not here next week, who knows, or next year you might be doing something else. Not because that was a plan, 20 years was my plan. But in terms of investing money, I just never thought about it. I saved money, but I didn't actually utilize some of the engines that UC has in terms of investing in something where the money is going to grow at a risky but rapid rate. So I might have done that a little bit differently. Not invested a lot, but something.
Going back on the reflection piece, I have a resource that I thought might be useful that I used myself. It's called the Character Traits Assessment, and it's something that comes out of positive psychology. And they were saying that it talks about 24 character strengths. And if you're using your top 5 character strengths, you will find joy in your life. And so I actually took this, so what was interesting is that the top 5 strengths I had actually fit into the role that I had as staff equity and diversity director, because there were some strengths around fairness, equity, and justice, and honesty and authenticity. And then what I thought was interesting is you got 24 character strengths. So when you get to the bottom, those are no longer strengths, but more like weaknesses. And I want to share with you what some of them are. One is, so these are not my strengths, but these are my weaknesses. So kindness and generosity, see, appreciation of beauty and excellence, gratitude, humor, and playfulness. So my thing is, I actually want to get better at those things. I want to play more. I want to laugh more. I want to show gratitude. And so those are the things I'm working on in terms of my own life to be, so that I could have a more balanced life. But I found this instrument to be just helpful. It's kind of fun to do. So hopefully if when you retire or even before you retire, just take a look at that and see, what comes up for you.
Thanks for sharing that resource. I know Camille put it in the chat for us. Alma?
I was jotting down just a couple words. I think that flexibility is absolutely essential, that whatever you might expect of retirement, once you get into retirement, you have to be flexible enough to shift gears, to go in a different direction, or accept that what you thought you were going to do isn't what you're going to do. So that's one thing. I think the second thing is, even before you retire, to the extent that you can commit to health, you don't have to give up everything, but so that you're mobile well into however long you're alive. I think it's very important. I guess those are the two things. And then, what David said, if you have the time and opportunity and you're still at the early end of thinking about retiring, look at the financial situation. If you can afford to invest, do it. Some of us just had sort of blind luck. We had other people making choices that we weren't really aware of, which was a nice thing. But I think those are that's what I'd like to leave the group with. Flexibility. And look for some fun.
Thank you.
My wife and I were talking to our estate planner, and I said, we'd like to leave this amount for this organization. And he looks at me and says, why wait until you're dead? And so that was a good question. And so we changed our strategy, and now we give what we can while we're alive. And we found that once we got into that habit, we now give small amounts to people that inspire us. Like we just read it in the New York Times about a Catholic guy in El Paso who has this big place, and he accepts undocumented immigrants who other agencies won't help, and he'll take anyone. So we'll send him $100 or $50. The other thing I regret very few things in my life, but one thing I do regret is that I waited until 60 to take up art and singing when I should have started when I was 6. And if I had started then, my career would have been much richer. And even if, I probably would have done the same thing, but I would have done them more creatively.
Thank you. So I'm going to switch to some of the questions either in the chat or pre-sent to us. One question that somebody asked was, and we're talking a little bit about kind of the financial piece of things, but if you have, and then we also shared resources in the chat about where to go at Berkeley for those financial pieces. But are there any other kind of tips that you have? Because there might be some anxieties about financial savings for medical needs, long-term needs, all those kinds of things that might come up. And I'll just ask it bluntly too. It's like, we're in California. Is it affordable to retire? Well, you don't have to go into the descriptive of your financial things, but is it possible? Go ahead.
Gosh, is it possible to retire? God, my brain just exploded on that question. I'm hoping that
you are all retired, though.
I am retired, right? and it's working out so far.
Cool.
So yeah, I do have to say that in regard to that, I have considered other places to go. I have many friends that said, oh, if this is too expensive, you can come here. So it is good to have some alternatives out there and people willing to sort of facilitate your moving to another location. I have a studio in Oregon, and some friends that it's at a friend's home there, and they're like, you should just move up here all the time and just paint, So yeah,
Yeah,
One
get
of
a
the
few
things,
options on the horizon.
some alternatives. Yeah.
Yeah.
one of the things I did say maybe 2 years before I retired is I said, okay, this is my, figuring out what your income might be like. I said, let me see if I can live on that. And I socked the rest away in a 403B. And what I discovered was I had enough to pay for all basic expenses, but I didn't have enough to pay for, like, say, vacations and whatever. So it let me know what my threshold was in terms of spending. So if you want to play with that, and then, the nice thing is you got money in your 403B for when you retire. But it was an interesting experiment to see how much I really was spending, and then what was it that I needed to cover, if anything, So that was one strategy I used.
Thanks.
Yeah. I did sort of map out expenses as I went along every few years, see what are you spending on X, Y, and Z,
When you're retired, you're spending your money on taxes and travel.
Yeah.
Taxes and travel. Okay. As long as you don't get taxed on the travel, I don't know. You're okay. So somebody asked in the chat, do you think you've changed in retirement? In other words, do you think you're kind of different people in retirement than when you were working?
Absolutely. I was very driven in my old job, to the extent that I actually stopped doing things that I enjoyed because I was so focused the last couple of years of delivering or whatever, thought I was going to leave a legacy, whatever the case may be. And it took me probably a year of not working to figure out, oh, there's life outside of this focus. And just to have the ability to take the time and reorient. So what's really meaningful, as I said early on, I read a lot of books, and I found this one book about the joy of not working is what it gets called. And it really helps you question what you really like to do, what you may think you want to do, your future. You map all that out, go back a few months later, cross everything out, start again. The difference I think now is I'm much more deliberate about the things that I actually commit to. And then when I commit, I'm very careful about how much energy and focus I put on it so that I don't completely play out. I mean, I think to some extent, the classic case of stress burnout, which is not a good thing, but I caught it before it went too far. But so, talking about change, I'm purposely slower on the things that I do so that in part I'm, as it were, smelling the roses, just taking a little time, enjoy the evening, enjoy the day, no matter how hot or whatever.
Thank you. Did that Joy of Not Working book have a bicycle with a guy reading a book on it? Do you remember?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Just want to make sure we give them the resources.
I believe the guy's name. All right. I'm not selling this book, but I just happen to have it.
Ernie. Yes. Yes.
Zelensky.
I'll put it in the chat. Yeah. Okay.
One of the few books I have to say was not dry when it was talking about retirement. Just it's very sort of a little corny, and that's why I liked it so much.
Yeah. Pat, did you have something to share? Yeah.
I think I've changed quite a lot. I think that I used to be angry almost all of the time, and I think that it stemmed from racism. There was a black psychologist, Menachem Resma, who says that people of color have racism becomes embodied at them within us almost from the time we're born. And I think that happened to me. And so that came out in rage. And when I retired and took up art and singing, I think that helped dissipate it. Uh, I think it's very hard to sing when you're angry. You can paint and draw when you're angry, but it grounds you. So it's been much nicer not being an angry person. Also, in my 20s, when I taught Asian American Studies, reading and composition, I found James Baldwin, Notes of a Native Son. And James Baldwin has been kind of my spiritual guide throughout my life. I still read him about rage and how rage will destroy you, but it's also inevitable too.
I think I have moved from kind of a future perspective, planning, goal-oriented stuff, when I was working, to now being more present, a present perspective. And so these are the things I live by. I try not to have any regrets. I realize that if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. If I don't buy it now, I'm never going to buy it. And I say to myself, you deserve it after, 34 years of working. So why not enjoy it? And also, it's not just about doing things, but it's really about experiencing things and making memories for myself and other people. And I also look at it is what it is, and, accept it and then kind of move on. So I think I'm moving to a more present place of being, which I think is because time is short for us. What do we have? I've got another quarter of my life if I, I'm lucky to live. And so I want to make the most of it.
Thank you. One question, and then I'm going to close too, is that has any of your relationships changed in terms of just either negotiating marriages, partnerships, all of those types of relationships?
Well, I don't have one of those, so that so that hasn't changed. But with my friends, yeah, a couple. I have a few friends that are a bit older than I am, and so it's giving more support and help to them, uh, and while still trying to maintain a sort of light airiness around myself, and not get too bogged down in all of that. But yeah, I think going back and redoing some. I'm hoping that a few of my old college teachers are still around, because I want to go back and say thank you. I'm going back to the East Coast, and I just want to go back and just say what a good job they did. I may not have turned out to be all the best, but they did a good job in passing on some good information, and I hope I've passed it on.
I think I've become, I think as my interests changed and grew, and I have a passion for ceramics and doing art, making art like Pat was talking about. I've become more independent. So the both of us, have our own interests, and we allow each other, support each other for those interests to grow. So that independence provides confidence and stuff. So I think I've grown more independent since I've retired, and my relationship has changed to support that. So we have a lot more interests. It works.
I will say there was an adjustment period. My husband and I both worked at Cal. We retired within 3 months of each other. Both of us in jobs that were actually fairly demanding. So we didn't really spend a whole lot of time together. I mean, you do, but you don't. And there's a point at which all of a sudden that's who you're with 24/7. And there's a little bit of an adjustment. There's a little bit of negotiation. There's a lot of, oh, I didn't remember that about you, or you've changed, I've changed, and so on. So I think what happens is that if you can get past that initial, oh my God, who's this other person I'm with, to wait a second, there's this other person that I used to know who's evolved just like I've evolved. We have maybe the same or maybe different tastes, but there's a chance to actually reconnect and talk. And I will say, we do negotiate. You're on one side of the house, I'm on the other, occasionally. And that's just part of living and adjusting and growing. So it's just something that you don't think about when you retire.
Two things have happened. I started drawing, painting these little floral cards, and I post them on Facebook. And if someone likes it, I send it to them. And I've sent out about 75 now. And what it's done is it's reconnected me with people that I've lost contact with. And so if anyone would like a floral card, check out my Facebook page. The other very important thing that happened during COVID is that my wife and I found out that we actually like each other quite a lot. And, you know, when you're there 24/7, that's a good thing to know.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, we have like 1 minute, so I'm going to do a speed round of just ending on a note of what's the best part of retirement. David, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. Really just being relatively free to go where you want when you want. If you decide you want to go to New Mexico, you can go.
Alma?
Okay, you stole my word. I was going to say freedom, but freedom of choice. It's that ability to, as I said, plan B, plan Z, do what you want to do within reason, switch gears, and do it right away, as opposed to I've got to plot it in the next 2 months or something.
I feel like I have more joy in my life.
Yeah.
The most important thing is love. You know, I've experienced a very deep love for my wife and vice versa, and we don't have that much time left. So it's nice to have that.
Thank you, everyone, for your words and for sharing your experiences. I don't know if I hand it back to you, Camille, to close us out, but I appreciate everybody. And I know we didn't get to a couple of questions, but we can definitely follow up.
Yeah, no, we got to most of them. Tracy, thank you so much. And Edith, David, Alma, and Patrick, thank you all so much. If you want to quickly, before we close, take a look in the chat at the end, you'll see all the thank you messages that people have posted about how much the panel has meant to them and what they've learned. So everyone here is thanking you very much as well. So it's been a great life and retirement event. So have a great retirement, everybody.
Yes,
Thank you.
and the freedom.
Yes.
Indeed.
All right. Take care,
Thank you.
everybody.
All right.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.